number 3, Golf Kilo Victor. Name is Bob. UTH is near Allentown, PA. I spoke to you last week, and I guess you detected some bass down around 100 hertz, and we were endeavoring to lower that, and which I did pretty much, but later in conversations,
equipment indicated that there was, low-end bass in there, and claimed it was, creating some mud. So I went into the settings on the radio and saw there was a low frequency filter on this thing. So that currently is set at 200, and I increased the slope from 6 dBs to 18 dBs per octave. Just curious if we're still seeing any kind of, if that's cut out some of the bass that you were saying. Back to you.
All right. First off, what radio are you running?
Using the Qso FTDX 101D, and I'm using an Electro Voice RE320 microphone on that.
Okay, and what is the setup? Are you running your compressor at a 3?
Yes, processor may be a little hotter than that, and I was thinking, is this better to do with the processor on?
No, you put your processor on a 3. That is a token amount, but it does exactly what it's supposed to do. So the processor on at a 3, Roger?
Okay, the processor has been turned back. I don't have really a 3s. I mean, the number would be 30, which would be, 3/10 of the way up.
Yes, sir, that's fine. And then go to your ALC, and with mic gain in hand, and adjust your ALC to mid-scale to 2/3 by your mic gain.
Okay, let me push this in here. Okay, mic gain now, let me back this off a little bit. The ALC is peaking up around 2/3 at this point.
Oh, Roger. Okay, now you want to be sure that your radio is in 100 to 2900. Your bandpass for that radio is 100 to 2900, Roger.
Okay, yes, in fact, you helped me with that last week, and we set it from the higher setting down to 100 to 2900.
Okay, so you are running 100 to 2900, Roger?
Yes, I am.
Okay, now let's go to your EQ. What kind of EQ do you have, sir?
Okay, the EQ is they're 3-band. This is the same one that was on the, from what I can tell, the same as on the ICOM 1200 and through the 5000 into the 101D. So what I'm running here is 200 hertz, currently a -10 with a bandwidth of 1.
I thought that was a 3-band. That sounds like a parametric. Is that a Roger?
Yes, it is a parametric. We're running those things. I think the first one goes up to 700. I'm not sure of all the ranges, but I had my first one set at 200. The second at 900, and the third I wanted to check out. Last weekend when I called in, I had it up at 2800 with a +10 and a bandwidth of 2, and doing some studying, and it looks like many people are running it more in the 2200 range, with the +10 and varying bandwidths. I didn't know if you had thoughts about one of those better, having it lower and increasing bandwidth, or running it up on the high end and jacking it up the way I was at the 2800.
Well, I think the issue is the low frequency. So I would go that bass EQ. I would put it in a what widths do you have that EQ?
Well, the EQ, I can go down to 100, and it goes up to, I think, close to, well, maybe 700 on the lowest, the bass EQ, or the lowest equalizer.
All right, I would continue rolling off on the bottom end. You're still heavy on the bottom end. Now I'm listening to a speaker system that's flat down to 50 cycles, so I can hear, a lot of stuff down there. I realize that other receivers are not going to be receiving anywhere near that lower frequency, but a lot of times those lower frequencies do cause distortion, and it has effects on some of the upper frequency ranges in the mid-range, although it is coming from a lower frequency distortion. So I would, what is your maximum roll number on that EQ? I mean, how many, is it like a -10?
It goes, and it's a -10, which is the highest I can cut it, and then the bandwidth right now is 1. I still was wondering, though, whether it wouldn't make sense on the low cut of the radio to knock. I'm at a 200 on that, and I was wondering, I mean, I could bring that down to 100, and that may get rid of this low end if you're still seeing it.
Sir, listen to me. You want to stay in the 100 to 2900 bandpass. When you get into lesser bandpasses, you're rolling off your top end as well as rolling off your bottom end. You want to keep that top end in the, basically 100 to 2900, so you have a nice top end, and then EQ the lower frequency out, Roger, or down.
Okay. That's fine. I found out that this thing has a low-cut filter in it, and I thought that would be one way to I mean, I understand the 100 to 29, and of course I'm going to leave it there. I just thought there is a low-cut filter on this thing that can take between 6 and 18 dBs off, and I currently have that at 200, and I'm thinking maybe that should be at the 100, which might help cut some of this out. But you're the person with knowledge here.
Right. Well, see, if you drop it from 200 to 100, it'll be even less effective than what it is now, Roger, because you want that to start at the upper frequency. You're pretty close, I think, now. If you would tell me about 15 seconds of your antenna situation, let me hear you.
Okay. We're using a 132-foot NZ antenna of about 30 feet, and a 40-meter dipole with a similar height, and butternut HF6 or 9V.
Roger. I think it sounds pretty good now. I would run it that way for a while and see who salutes, Roger.
Okay, fine. Just one other question. Is there any on the equalizer, on the higher one, before I was running again at 2800 with a bandwidth of 2 and a plus 10. It's now set at 2200 with plus 10, and I have a bandwidth of 2. I didn't know if widening that bandwidth would help on the higher end.
Mike sounds pretty good now. I think I would leave it for the time being. It just seems to me, and this is just my opinion, that folks dealing with parametric equalizers, it gives you a lot more capability, but it sure sometimes becomes a pain in the whatever, because sometimes you can have too many options. And I know, I love parametric EQ, but as far as the simplicity of a very basic 3-band EQ, non-parametric, gives you probably as much control as you need. My deal is that I usually keep the mid-range EQ flat, because the whole idea is to find balance between the top and the bottom. And if you boost the mid-range, it's so much harder for the top and the bottom to catch up to balance. So keep the, I always keep the mid-range EQ flat, and then it's easier to find balance by, bringing up the bottom or the top or whatever it needs. Roger?
Okay, yeah, no, and I agree. I had the 7610. Of course, since I had come from the 5000, I was frustrated that there was so little to adjust on the 7610. But to your point, it was a lot better in the real world. Just one thing, if I could here, I have this.
Just one thing, if I could here, I have this. You were talking about the mid-range, and I've been running mine at a -6, which I thought maybe sounded better on the monitor. Now I'm running that thing at 0, as maybe you were suggesting. Did that make any difference of note?
Oh, certainly, yes. But keep that at 0, and then go to your ALC, because you've had an increase in signal strength on your ALC since you reduced that that roll in the mid-range, particularly mid-range. So you're a lot hotter now. So come back and readjust by mic level your ALC level.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Okay. Testing with this. The mic. Let me bring down the processor level too here. This thing has an AMC control. I don't know if you're familiar with those things, but it makes it. When you change one thing, you almost have to change another. So I'm down now to a.
Really doesn't come down much more. I'm at a mic gain level.
A mic gain level of 20 now, and processing level of 20, which is a lot lower than it had been.
All right, what's your ALC reading?
Okay, ALC is running pretty much mid-scale to
Roger, I'm not getting as good a signal on you now as I was, so it's a little bit harder to tell, but I think you will be better off with that flat mid-range EQ. Keep that mid-range EQ flat, and then it's so much easier to find balance. When what happens is, well, I don't want to say what happens, just keep that mid-range flat.
Okay, Jim, that's fine. I've taken up enough time, and it sounds like bringing that thing to flat maybe was helpful. I'll have to play around here and maybe fool around with the other AMC setting and then get this ALC at your recommended level of half to 2/3. So, again, thank you for all your help. You're a treasure to the amateur community. So 73, have a great weekend. This is N3GKV.
Roger, and you did have a little distortion there, and I think it was due to the fact that you had that mid-range roll down, and so now that distortion has gone by the boards. I don't hear that at all anymore. So good on you. Save it down close enough, and join us next Friday.
Okay, very good, Jim. Thank you. 73. Have a great weekend.
Roger, Roger. 3Z sir. This is KC9VKV, the Friday afternoon Qso-Vlog network. If you have a radio you want to check out, give me a shout.